think the introduction make it sound like very like a big deal, but it's actually nothing, lah. Huh? All of us do this work in the medical field. Everybody has to contribute in some way or other. All right. So it may sound as if that I've done quite a lot of funny things for a lot of people, but actually in the medical field, it's always been like from the senior we pass on to the junior. So teaching, developing things is part and parcel of it all. Yeah, especially when we're in the public sector, it is expected that we help to set up stuff, get to train our juniors and try to improve quality of care for the patients over the years. Okay, so anyway, today's topic is actually an interesting topic. I gave a similar talk some time ago, right? And so today they asked me to sort of talk again on this topic here. But what I'm going to do today is actually give it a slightly different slant, because the last audience I had was basically not at a strictly Buddhist organization, but so I kept it very secular. And and today I will also use some, or rather I'll reference some of the Buddhist things that we know or we believe in. Yes? Can you hear me? Closer, is it? Okay. All right. Wow, your need so loud. Okay. So I think this topic, when I say optimizing life, so what does it really mean? All right, we all have lived so many years, and then look at everybody here, we're all differing ages. I think there are quite a number who are probably around my age. So we have actually gone through quite a lot of life. So am I trying to tell you that I know how to make it better than you? Well, I don't think so. So, but anyway, we'll share some things. And what is very interesting is that just before I came here today, right, just a few moments before I came here, I bumped into one of my neighbors of many, many years, because I've stayed in the same place since 1974, in the HDB area. And this neighbor of mine, just by chance, so appropriate for the topic today, I've known her since I was a kid. Okay, she was a widow, so she took care of her children by selling bread. So she used to go door to door to sell bread. And then as a kid, I used to love those little buns with cream inside. So it's very nice and right. So every afternoon she comes by, I will try to buy one and eat. So over the years we've known each other for like now very 40 years, I think. Okay. So I met her this morning, and she asked me, "How's your mom?" I said, "Okay lah, my mom's all right. Is she active or not?" I said, "Not really." Why is she not active? I said, "Well, she doesn't want to do much things, right? So she usually just keep quiet, stay at home, sleep, wake up, that kind of stuff." Okay. Then she said, "Why like that? Why like that?" Yeah. I'm very active. I believe that we have to keep active to lead a very good life. You see, because if I don't remain active, my brain will start to deteriorate. All right? She's got 2 kids who she brought up single-handedly from her work. Yeah, and now both of them are successful. Both of them immigrated, so she's here alone. She's practically 80 years old, and she's still working. Okay, she is one of those people who work because she really wants to work. Okay, not the people who work half bent, half limping, and still have to work. Different. Okay, she really, really is fit, and she wants to work. So she explained to me why she felt that it was important to engage people, to work, to mix around. She said, well, if you go older, if you stay at home, your brain will start to deteriorate. You start to get weaker. And very little meaning. My kids have asked me to go with them to the US to stay with them. Right? I said, why do I want to go and stay with you? Right? I can live alone. So they say, oh no, go over, take care of, help to take care of grandchildren if we have grandchildren. They say, if you have grandchildren, we'll talk about it. You got no grandchildren, then you leave me alone. I'd rather be here, right? You give me whatever money I will spend, but I earn my own money, so I don't have to burden you, right? And I have my own activities. And this morning, as I was talking to her, she said, after this, I'm going to church. All right? So my routine is I go to work about 4 or 5 hours a day, four times a week, and then I will sort of read newspaper, read books, yeah, go out, engage with people, go to the church. Also, church is social, right? They get to meet people and interact with people. So I think this is such an interesting chance meeting, of somebody who was at that age and had made such a good sort of quality of life. She's really 80, she's nearly 80, she told me, right? So I said, wow, this is a really good meeting, just appropriate for today, okay? So I think let's use her lifestyle as an example, as a starting point of how we can optimize our lives, okay? Now, when we actually talk about life in general, all of us know, right? When we are young, we study, right, to pass some exams, and then at whatever point then we stop studying, we start working, then we work. After we work, then we say, okay, I need to develop career. Then if those who get married will have families and bring up family. After that, retire, so-called retire. Okay, after retire, then do what? Okay, then do what? But of course, there are a lot of other considerations which we know, right? Which the government knows, and they try to remind us all the time that when you retire, you need resources to take care of yourself, right? Because it's a very expensive thing to take care of a person when you're old, right? But we have never really thought through it clearly, okay? So at different points in our life, to optimize it is different, all right? But I think today, I just want to try to concentrate on just broad things that I think is important, especially as we grow older, right? As you know, our population is not getting younger. Every year we're getting older and older, and more and more old people, right? So in a matter of years, we will have less and less younger people supporting the older people. And also because of our stop at two policy so successful, right? So we're getting less and less people, who can take care of the next generation, right? They say start at 2, but a lot of them now start at 1, so even less people to take care. All right, so we have to plan as we grow older what we want to do for ourselves, for our lives, right? To ensure that we can continue living in a good way, right? And also, as a Buddhist, not only we talk about living, right? We talk about preparing for dying, because dying is equally important, right? How you prepare things for death is actually very, very important. Okay, let's talk about living first, okay? Let's talk about living. Now, what do you think will be a thing that will be important as you grow old? Of course, a lot of people tell you, oh, family is important. Yes, to some degree, yes, okay? But is that everything as you grow older? As you all know, right, if those with families with children, we all know, after a certain age, your kids will move away. Whether they get married or they don't get married or whatever, they tend to move away. And they want to lead their own lives, So ultimately, within a few years of them being adults, you usually end up alone or with your spouse, that's all, okay? So a lot of people will feel a sudden loss, and sometimes when the loss is impending, they create problems for themselves, all right? I mean, it's not uncommon. Sometimes the parents say, okay, I know my kids are going to get married and all that, but yet when the kids start to date and all that, they feel a sort of very deep-seated threat, So they start to try to say, this one no good lah, this one don't get married lah, this one don't marry to this one lah, no good lah. Actually, deep inside, much as they know logically they should let it be, right? Illogically, deep inside, the insecurity tries to hold them back, Try to say that, if they get married, that means they move away, Or maybe I cannot get along with this and all that. All right, so this is a problem, right? But all this comes down to one thing, right? We have not settled our own thinking, and also we're also a bit too dependent on external factors to make us happy, right? Family, friends, everything around you, to make you happy. Of course, it's not to say that it's not important. Of course, it's part of the whole equation that you have to have all these things to help you to optimize your life, but your life cannot totally depend on all these things alone, all right? I think in Buddhism, one of the most important principles in Buddhism, in the practice, is to start off with a lot of contentment, right? Contentment is one of the greatest blessings you can have, right? And what do we mean by contentment in Buddhism? Do we mean that to be content means you become passive, don't do anything? You're in a bad situation, oh, I'm content, I don't do anything, Yeah? I got no food to eat, I'm content, I just starve to death. No, it's not like that, okay? Contentment is very different, right? Contentment means you are happy with what's happening now, but you can still work for improvement, right? And if the improvement comes, you're just happy with it anyway. If it doesn't come, you accept it and you just move on, you just keep doing, All right, so being able to accept the situation is different from being passive and not doing anything about the situation. All right? A lot of people, when they study Buddhism, they think that Buddhism encourages you to be passive and not move ahead, not to improve, right? Not to make your life better, because Buddhism says, oh, you have to renounce everything. Yeah, but it's not about renouncing to the point of making yourself uncomfortable and all that, right? That's an extreme, right? You're not talking about chasing to the point where you go crazy and you lose sight of what the meaning of your whole life is all about. That's the other extreme, right? One is this intense discontent, right? That you keep chasing. Because sometimes people ask me, there are a lot of successful people, why are they still so unhappy? I say, well, when you first start, most people chase for money. After you chase for money, you got the money, you chase for power. After you chase for power, you still can, you already got your power, everything seems to be okay, what do you chase for? Right? Then you start to chase for things that are really very interesting, Things that are so relative. You compare with your neighbor. If the fellow has the thing, I must have better than him. But what logic is this? Actually, you're very good already compared to the rest of the population. Right? So you don't have to chase, because if you keep on doing this type of thing, you are never content. So there is this niggling discomfort and how can I say, unrest that in your mind that will actually keep on making you agitated. When you sleep, also you worry. You worry about, will I lose out to the guy? Will I lose my money so I become poorer than him? Right? He can buy this car, but I cannot buy this car. The kind of silly things that will bug you for forever and ever. All right? And these things nobody can help you, right? I always say that you don't need very much to make yourself happy, because we all in Singapore, okay, most basic things are settled. You look at a lot of countries around us when they don't have very much. Are you saying that all the people there are very unhappy? Obviously not, right? There are a lot of people there who are all still quite happy, right? Even with the little that they have, but the happiness varies in what makes them happy. But nevertheless, the mental processes of happiness is still there, right? So there's something to reflect on, all right? But does it again mean that you are passive to the point where you don't seek improvement? No. It's not about being passive and not seeking improvement. So seeking improvement in life is something that should be ongoing. All right? Like, for example, when you're young, of course, you study to do the best you can, right? But don't go to the point of being crazy, Every time I have to be the top student. We all know, all of us are working adults here mostly. We all know already. Does it really make a big difference other than after your school years? Actually, it doesn't make a difference. After a while, they just look, oh, you got a certificate, okay, put aside. Your employer doesn't really look, after a while, right? And a lot of the very top performers were not top A students anyway. We all know that. Yeah? Similarly for doctors, exactly like that. A lot of the very, very smart one on paper doesn't work out very good on the ground. Okay? So we know that all these things are just a means to an end. And education is just to provide you with the tools so that you can survive, you can do certain kind of work, you can function in the world, and earn you a living, right? And get a roof over your head and some food in your stomach. That's about it. Okay, so don't get obsessed with it. But is it to say that learning is no good or not important? No, continuous learning is important. Like this lady that I spoke to, she's 80 years old, right? She still wants to engage and want to learn new things, right? She reads, you see? So does she have a target? Does she need to compete with anybody? No, she doesn't even have the attitude of competing with anybody. She just said, no, I do this because I think it's good and it keeps me active. It prevents my mind from deteriorating. You see, the motivation is different, right? One is to compete with people. I show you I am better. This one, no. I'm doing it because I know this is good, so therefore I do it to improve life. That's all. Okay, so continuous learning, right, and improvement in all ways should not be seen as something that you're craving for. But the difference is very thin, because when you're craving for it, you are never content. That means you always want to reach a target, and if you don't reach it, you get very upset. But if you're doing it for the purpose of true improvement, the whole process itself is more important than the end result. Okay? Because the end result will definitely be some benefit, but you don't fix the end result, and if you don't achieve it, you kill yourself over it. Then that's the wrong aim. It's like somebody studying because he enjoys the work, or somebody studying because he is forced to study. Very different, right? Okay? Somebody studying because you know that this knowledge is important for him to use. Like, for example, for us as medical people, when we actually learn something, we study for exams and all that. I've spoken to many medical students, and we have always talked about this, right? A lot of them say, oh, I know I have to study, I have to mark. I say, but yeah, I agree with you, you have to study, but you have to set your motivation right so that the stresses of studying will be lessened, but your effort in studying is not changed, all right? Now, a lot of times when we study, we stress ourselves for the number or for the grade, right? But we always have to think a bit further to understand why we are doing it. At least for in the medical field, I say always study for the sake of your patients. You think that if you study more, you know more, you can do better for your patients. So remaining competent by keeping up with things is very important, right? Because it is for your patients. It is not because I can clock my points and retain my CME so that I can remain my registration, okay? Right? You can see, right, the end point is the same, but the mental state behind it can be very different. And with that kind of thing, it's saying that, okay, I study, I maintain my skills because I want to take care of my patients well, I don't want to be incompetent, I don't want to make mistakes and kill my patient. Then the motivation is so different, right? It's a very positive motivation, so you just do your best, right, with the best intention. Chances are you are going to be more efficient, right? Because the mind is more relaxed, it's positive. The other one is aggressive, is a win and lose situation. So when you study, you become like very kiasu, very tense, right? Because it's all a win and lose. But this one no win and lose. It's because it's for other people, it's for for the community at large. Your heart opens up, and therefore your mind states actually calm down, and you become clearer, calmer, you study better. All right? So the motivation is very important. So okay, say what if not medical? I'm doing like, for example, business, right? So business world, dog eat dog, and this sort of thing. No lah, but all businesses also got its role, right, in the world. Without the businesses, we can't have all the conveniences that we have, right? So we need the businesses too, right? So businesses can be done in the right way. So I do my business the best. For example, if I'm a F&B person, and I'm, having a restaurant, I do the best so that my customers are happy, they have good food to eat, things like that, right? I aim for that perfection, by trying to get the best food out so that my customers benefit. So again, a very different mindset, right? And also, you can set yourself your own personal challenge. This is my potential, I want to achieve the potential. No need to put another person into the picture. Once you put another person and comparisons into the picture, you will end up with a lot of stress. All right? So comparisons are actually one of the biggest sources of problems. Right? But of course, people always say competition, competition, competition. Competition more or less implies that you need something to compare against, right? But actually to think about it, you can achieve the same thing without that kind of aggressive thinking. You can just back off a little bit, take a slightly different view of it. You can still do it. You compete against yourself lah. Set your own targets and just work towards it. That's it. Right? Stop comparing. We all know after a while, right? In fact, in Buddhism also, we always talk about it, right? A lot of things in the world are very relative, right? One man's food is the other man's poison, right? So what is very good for one person may not be so good for the other person, right? So don't be too absolute about these things. Because when you start comparing, we become very absolute. And this absoluteness in our thinking processes are actually killers. Okay, they make us very unhappy most of the time. Yeah, so it has to be a balance, and also the motivation set right. It will give you a lot of peace. So continuous learning is actually one of the very important things that optimizes your life, because it gives you a goal, it gives you something that improves you, right? And the hidden benefit, which people don't talk much about, is that you continuously learn, your mind keeps active, and chances are you're going to maintain better mental capacity as you age, right? The more passive you are, you switch off, you don't want to learn anything, all your brain circuits start to slow down, you prematurely age your brain, and then you become a little bit more forgetful, because learning requires focus, right? Some concentration, some activation of multiple linking of the circuits, because learning always has associative sort of some sort of association between things to remember things, right? And logic to see this leads to that, that leads to this, All right? All these processes are very important to keep your brain working well. And this will see you well into old age. And as you go into the old age and your mind remains nice and clear, active, you find that a lot of things, more things you can do. All right? You may think it's just we are talking about mental, but the mental always affects the physical. So if you're mentally active, chances are you'll be physically active also. all right? And if you're physically impaired because of some disability due to age, if you're mentally active, you will be willing to actually work around it. You'll be, proactive, right? Like in the case of some people I know, I mean, they have certain impairments, but they're so positive in outlook, they're creative. If I can't walk like that, I will hold a stick. If I can't hold a stick, I will do this. I can't do this, I do this. They can figure it out. Don't have to go to the physio to tell you to do it. In fact, a lot of times, if people have been to physiotherapy or whatever therapy, they guide you to teach you some sort of thing. But ultimately, you learn and you have to modify according to yourself, right? Then you learn and then you must be motivated to keep going. They can't teach you every day of your life, every second of your life. They just guide you, give you the blueprint, give you the ideas, you do it yourself, use your common sense. If you're active mentally, you do it. That's fine. Okay, that's about learning. The other thing, of course, is about interaction with people and relationships. Most of our lives, in early life, we always, the main thing is family, right? So we interact a lot with the family, some school friends, Then as you go older, you get your colleagues, right? But you can see that most of this interaction is very often in your need to sort of circle, need to, right? Because bo pian ma, colleagues you have to see, family you have to see, right? But you don't really interact with people beyond that, right? Now, what I'm proposing here is this, is that it's actually important to actually try to interact and form relations and activities with people outside of your usual circle, okay? In fact, many years ago, I can't remember what was the reason where I looked this up anyway, right? About old people. Of course, this is a study done in UK, right? They said that old people are lonely even if when they have families. And those who are less lonely are those who have other social activities, like, they have like voluntary group activities, where they do things for other people that has a meaning, right? So this involvement in, like, for example, like those like Lions Club, whatever, this sort of thing, or in our situation, sometimes Buddhist organizations, whether it's due to teaching or small things, small projects and this and that. They said these people actually are happier. It's not to say that those people with families don't have visits and all that. The family visits, they're happy, of course, right? But most of the time, they have this deep-seated loneliness, right? Because I think there's this, because they know that their families can't be there all the time, right? So the moment the family comes, happy, next moment, sad, that kind of thing, most moment, depressed, right? So those people who have all these activities have their own friends. So this, like my neighbor, this one, she goes to church, right? So for us as Buddhists, we can go to our Buddhist organizations, right? Or small groups. And doesn't mean it has to be a religious thing. You can also have other social groups. Like even some elderly, I mean, they form groups of friends where they meet up for tea, coffee, whatever, on a regular basis. So these are the things that give them some meaning in life. And also makes you less lonely. But of course, if you are the kind that very meditative, very solitary, this is not going to be your problem, okay? But I'm talking about more like, normal people like all of us, where we are quite social. This change as you grow older, when a lot of your peers, your normal peers that you used to know, your friends, your classmates, your relatives, some of them may have died already, right? So interacting in groups outside of your usual groups actually allow you to open up your social circle, and you get to know new people, right? Different age groups. So your thinking don't get stuck in, like people say, alamak, this one out of touch, old fogey, You won't be like that, right? Because you mix with younger people, so you know roughly what they're thinking, and you don't know why. You say, ask lah, Right? In the good old days, of course, things were rigid, right? You're old, you're supposed to behave in a certain way, right? You're young, you're supposed to behave a certain way. If the old trying to behave young, they say, this one's xiao liao, right? So now it's different, right? We try to understand. And we understand, you can relate, the lines are very blurred, right? Of course, you can't do the same activities, all the same activities as a younger person. But nothing to stop you from doing a modified version of it, all right? I still remember when I was overseas once on a holiday, there's this American couple, they were about nearly 70 years old, they were whitewater rafting, with us, We were much younger, like half their age, and they were whitewater rafting with us, right? They just retired because they worked quite old, and then they were doing it, and it was really a tough one, no? Even for us, we struggled, okay? Right? And the thing after all, we get the rapids and boom, we just thrown off the whole thing, Yeah, and they were like, oh, okay, no big deal, just slowly swim back to the thing, climb over, Yeah. And they're 70 years old. How many of our 70-year-old wants to do that? All right? So it's something to think about, okay? Because in every culture, we are slightly different, all right? In the Western culture, they have always been very much more active because of their social sort of way of the social sort of, how can I say, habits, a bit different from ours, right? You know, right, when the kids reach about 20 years old, most of them will leave, right? They are also not interested in the kids taking care of them. The kids are also not interested in taking care of them, okay? But that said, don't go around the wrong idea that the Westerners are all, the family relationships are poor. Not at all. It's the same everywhere. People are the same, believe me. All right? When I was in the US doing my training, I thought like, wow, Westerners, where they, I mean, they're not close, right? We're all Asian, got good, you know, Asian values, right? Nonsense, right? When the crunch comes, you will see the families will come. They travel far and wide to come, all right? But their way of support is slightly different. We are very sticky, right? They are not. They're a little bit distant. But when you need the help, you need somebody's going to die, somebody needs this, needs that, people will come, right? The immediate family is very close, right? Different from us. Ours is like very sticky, then the whole kampong, but you know, the interaction is very complicated, very messy. For them, it's very clean. It's usually immediate family. Other people will help, but they stay outside the inner circle. All right? So it's a very objective sort of kind of interaction. Right? So they're a little bit different from us. Right? I don't think there's a good and bad part of it. Yeah? Each has its pros and cons. Too sticky sometimes got too much political interaction and, you know, right? Even among relatives, with a lot of friction from all sorts of nonsense. Right? A bit distant sometimes I think there's some benefit. Right? Too distant become like don't care. Right? So like all things middle path somewhere in between, right? That's good. Okay, we are slowly gravitating somewhere a little bit towards the west, but not quite there. And I think the balance is for each society to find, and also for us as individuals. Yeah, because for them a lot of things are private, so they like no family, illness, death. It's a very private affair. So a lot of their friends all just stay there. They're concerned, they offer help, but they stay outside that circle. Okay. Like here, you know, everybody wants to know, right? So much so that our poor doctor has gotten into trouble, right? Yeah. And in the reality, actually, to be fair, the reality is that, you know, when a family member has something in Singapore or in our local context, very often, not just the husband, wife, very often it's the brothers, sisters, the sister-in-law, the cousin-in-law, all know. Everybody know, right? So the privacy thing is a joke because it's always known. Because we are like that, right? We will talk, yeah? Unless there's a quarrel or whatever, then we don't tell this one. But usually they will know, because the support structure is such. Socially, we are like that, okay? So that's that. Okay, so this interaction with society and how we interact with each other also very important, all right? Now, another thing that is very important, which I want to talk on, which is maybe a little bit not so nice sounding. We talk about preparing for old age and death, okay? Yeah. So of course, old age, as I said, we talk about interacting with people, you know, learning and all that, right? It's basically to keep you active, right, and engaged until you're old. It also means that, you know, it's good to always work, do a little bit of work. Whether voluntary or non-voluntary, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that you're 80 years old, you should just sit around and do nothing, right? If you feel that you're capable of doing something and contributing, whether voluntary or otherwise, do it. Keep yourself occupied. If you feel that you have no such things, you want to work, and you're fit, or even you're not so fit, but you think that you're okay, maybe it's not a bad idea to take a little bit of work. You don't have to work like, 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. No need lah. Just maybe work 3 days a week. Like this lady, 4 days a week. She works half a day. She just works as a cleaner in the office that she worked for 30 over years. Okay? She just does simple things. But it just keeps you occupied. People have also asked me, are you going to retire? When are you going to retire? I said, retire for what? Right? Retire for what? Unless I'm going to be, going to go and retreat and become a monk, maybe retire lah. Stop everything and then start a new career. Okay? It's a different career, right? But if I'm not doing that, retire what? Right? Am I going to continue working? Why not? Maybe I don't want to work so hard, so I just cut down the number of hours that I work, right? Don't have to go to clinic every day, sit down there, wait for patients to come, that kind of thing. I've seen some doctors who have no life. After so many years they've worked, right? Now they're like semi-retired. They practically got no patients to see. But yet every morning, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, they're there, Just sit there, then they're up and down with them walking the corridors. I don't know what they're doing, right? No meaning. No meaning, okay? So please don't become like that, right? Do something meaningful, right? So in that, you can always contribute in your own way, just think of something, okay? So now talking about as you get older and your health starts to deteriorate and all that, how to prevent some of these things. Okay, as you all know, preventive medicine and all that doesn't start when you are old, all right? No point trying to suddenly control your diet like crazy when you're 80 years old. Nothing is going to happen to you. All right? I don't think there are any studies that are going to show that 80-year-old, you don't eat fat, you don't eat this, you don't eat that, and you're going to live longer. I don't think so. Okay? A lot of the damage done when you're young. Right? All the years of damage has been done. All right? Now, I had a recent trip to the US. I can understand why the US in general has a poor quality of health. Their food is horrible. Okay, it's really very bad. Superly processed. I'm not those organic people, right? I'm talking about superly processed. Is that unnecessary processing, right? When you can cook one piece of beef, or you can just mince the beef and make a beef ball, for example. Why do you need to put so many million chemicals in it just to make a patty that will last forever, right? It's almost like you throw outside, and probably the mushroom also won't grow on it, Yeah, I'm not kidding you, It's so superly processed. I was so appalled by the whole thing. And interestingly, when I was there also, because in the morning and I was sitting at a cafe for breakfast, so I faced this escalator, and then there was this conference of, I think, pipe traders. Very interesting. They got this type of interesting conference. So a lot of the people were walking up and down, they're going for the conference, right? And everybody was holding a Coke in their hand. Tells you something. Okay? But one thing I noticed, most of them were not very old. They're probably about 40, yeah? But all of them are obese. Every single one of them are obese. Okay? Shocking, right? Very shocking. They're the ones that so-called tell the world what to do and everything, but they are the ones that are not leading a good life. Why? Right? But I think, again, these are all it's historical, it's their way of life that's been there slowly, gradually eating into them. And it's become a habit, so they can't change. Right? In fact, I'm trying to look for proper food, like a proper chicken chop maybe, or proper beef steak or whatever. So hard to find, Everywhere is hamburger of some sort. It's scary, right? It's very, very scary. So, okay, never mind. So my point is, taking care of your health starts young. Okay, start as young as you can, but it's never too late to start. If you haven't started, too bad, but you just have to start somewhere, right? Start somewhere. So the things that you can modify are this. Okay, what's in your arteries, I cannot do anything once you are 80 years old, right? But what I can do is that if you're young, then please be a bit more healthy with your diet, all right? Of course, there's so many fad types of diets, this cannot, that cannot, what keto diet, what paleo diet, what nonsense diet, right? But I think in the end of the day, if you look at it, the medical thing has been going in cycles. So I think at the end of the day, again, Buddhism has the right answer there, moderation, okay? Don't go crazy about anything. Just eat in moderation, right? But I think the information or the data seems to suggest now that slightly lower carbohydrate may be a good thing, right? That means we usually eat too much sugar or carbohydrate, sugar type of stuff. So maybe we should just cut that down a little bit, right? And one thing that I must highlight, because I think most people don't realize this, everybody thinks it's healthy, fruit juices. Remember, fruit juices are not the same as eating a fruit, okay? Because if you, let me just tell you what I think. If I ask you to eat an orange, how many oranges would you eat normally? One, yes. How many oranges are there in one orange juice? Have you thought about it? Maybe even 4, depending on the size, right? A lot, you see them go and squeeze things. Then you tell them you go and buy one just for fun. You see them squeeze 1 orange, 2 orange. That's why you always ask them, why so expensive? Because there's so many oranges inside, okay? So it's a lot of sugar, All your fruit juices, a lot of sugar. I'm not kidding you, right? So don't be deceived, Eating a fruit is not the same. Because eating a fruit, by proportion, your sugar is less and there's a lot of fiber. In a fruit juice, by proportion, you have a lot of sugar, okay? All right? Yeah, and sometimes, depending on how they do it, they throw away the fiber, right? So you got not much fiber. Okay? So something to remember and keep in mind. All right? What about the other kinds of food that you eat? Well, as I said, the pendulum has swung all over the place. One moment they say cannot eat too much fat. One moment they say fat is still okay, so you don't eat trans fat. Right? So I suggest that instead of going crazy over it, because every 10 years they will change the recommendations. So just eat in moderation. All right? Now, so diet is part of the story. Just don't overdo your carbs. And if you can maintain your weight nicely, you're probably okay in general. Okay? Now, one fallacy also is that, you can outrun your food. You will never outrun your food. Okay? A lot of people at the gym, even in the US was there, I saw it. A lot of people running on the treadmill are all fat. Okay? Right? So you cannot outrun your calories. Just to give you an example, if you were to drink 1 can of standard Coke, right? It's about 130, 140 calories, kilocalories as we call it. For an average person like myself, if I want to run a treadmill, 20 minutes. Okay, how long does it take for you to drink? Finish. Okay, scary, right? Very, very scary. So keep it in mind. You cannot outrun your calories. So the only way is you control intake. So moderate your intake. All right? Now, the next part, of course, is activity. Very important for activity. As I said, working is some sort of activity. You move around and all that. But of course, not all of us have work that makes you move too much. A lot of times you are sedentary also. You sit down at the desk job and all that. And as you grow older, all of us will have this pain, that pain, this here and there, And modern things that help us, like computers and handphones and all that, also add on to the pain, right? Because your head is like that all the time. Okay, so so what can you do other than diet now is how to improve your physical welfare. Of course, some sort of exercise is important, right? But you have to be appropriate to your age. As you grow older, you don't recover like a younger person. So, you can't go and do something very crazy that you have not done all these years. And then, like, if, for example, you say, okay, you're old, and suddenly you want to do your weights training, and then you think you want to become like Arnold, that kind of thing, no? You're not going to be able to do it, right? Without a high risk on your back, So don't be crazy, because you're so prone to injury. You work out very, very intensely for today, 3 days you cannot recover. So you must give yourself some time. You're 20 years old, you can work out like crazy every day, you're fine. All right? Your body is different. So we all have to adjust. And if you need to seek some advice, you probably have to seek some professional advice, do it. All right? You're serious about it. But again, it's the same moderation, but probably exercise about 3 times a week would be good. About half an hour, 1 hour. No need to be very crazy hard, But something that will exercise your entire body. Running is only your one part. Okay? So I would suggest that, in the activity level, some weights, right? Whether you use weights or you can use body weight exercises. There are many things that allow body weight exercises, right? Simple things like, for example, sitting and getting up from a chair multiple times, you'll be surprised it's actually quite good, Right? Especially for older people, very good, because it improves your leg muscles, which is the one that always gives trouble, because as you get older, you get unstable, your legs get weak, you tend to fall, right? But being able to sit down and get up on the chair all the time, just, what we call a squat, right? But if a chair below so you don't fall, actually to strengthen your leg muscles. So do things like that, right? Be happy to carry a little bit, go market, go shopping, just carry some things around, lift your hand up and down, Go for Tai Chi, go for yoga, whatever, all right? You may not look like very much activity, especially for older people, the yoga and all that, and Tai Chi especially. It's good. Actually, there are studies to show that Tai Chi and all that improves their balance and they have less falls, all right? So physical activity is important. Some sort of training is important. As you age, once you're above 30, 40, your muscle mass starts to drop. Whether you like it or not, it drops. All right? Every year you keep on losing. All right? Even if you're eating well, doesn't mean that you're a rich person. Every day you eat a beef stick, you're going to be okay. Of course, you're going to be better off with somebody who doesn't eat any protein. Right? But still not going to be okay, because there's a natural loss. Unless you exercise and your diet has sufficient raw materials, like proteins. Okay? So exercise is important. All right? And I said, please, not just run and run and run and run and run. Okay? You need other things. You need to strengthen your truncal muscles. That means you need to do, like, as I said, those type of squat type of exercises, some limb exercises, maybe some mobility exercises to maintain your health. All right. So, as I said, Tai Chi Yoga is usually quite good as a milder form, and those who can do it do body weight exercises, a little bit of weights, right? So I said the weights is really, you're not there to build muscle, right? You're just there to maintain and keep your muscle active. So you don't have to be very heavy. Yeah, higher repetitions but lower weights. That's fine. So they don't get hurt. Need a trainer? Get one. Okay, if you can, or you can form an interest group where somebody knows how to do it. Teach each other lah. Very easy, right? Maybe here we can organize something even. Yeah, right? You all have, right? Yeah, so it's, yeah, so see, so some things like that, right? So various things. So this is the physical, right? Mental. Of course, mental, there's another component, which is the spiritual, right? Again, as you grow older, when you're young, you're invincible. I mean, the spiritual things don't concern you too much, right? You always wonder whether it makes does it really matter anyway, right? So you just live your life, whether you believe in God, you believe in Buddha, believe in whatever, you really, it's there, you let the label somewhere, but you don't really do much, right? But I think, as a Buddhist, we all know, right, the mental component is actually very important. It drives a lot of things, okay? So mental clarity, sense of purpose driven by compassion, all these things make your life a lot better. So mental clarity and all this can be trained, right? So in Buddhism, we have the advantage of being one of the earliest, right, people to know the practice of mindfulness and meditation. Meditation did not belong to Buddhism. It predates Buddhism. A lot of cultures had it. But definitely the emphasis on mindfulness is in Buddhism, right? Today, mindfulness is marketed like everywhere, right? Everybody wants to jump on the bandwagon. Everybody wants to get a certificate so that they can teach mindfulness. Of course, it's a joke, right? We get it for free all the time. Yeah. So why are we not appreciating it? So let's use it. Practice meditation, practice mindfulness, and then make it part of your practice. All right. But as I said, in Buddhism, we always talk about developing compassion and wisdom, right? It's always a combination of compassion and wisdom, right? Compassion, as I've already pointed out earlier on, if your life has meaning because you interact with people for their good, right? Out of your compassion, actually your life becomes very positive, right? It becomes a very positive force. And that positive force will reflect back on yourself and you become a happier person, right? You become a happier person. Now, the practice of mindfulness or practice of concentration, so different forms of meditation, the advantage for you is that you maintain your mental sharpness and agility, all right? A calm mind generally is a clear mind. A clear mind is a sharp mind. You can dissect things, can analyze things, can learn new things, right? So that's something that we should set ourselves some time. Sometimes we talk about the physical thing, a bit of exercise, that's a physical exercise. So do something for mental exercise, which is your meditation. All right? Meditation, as you know, can take the form of what we did just now. We sit down, a guided meditation. But there's so many forms, okay? But of course, in Buddhism, there are two aspects to it. One is just to train the focus and one-pointedness, and the other one is, of course, to learn about yourself and understand how you function. And mindfulness does allow that. And the West is actually starting to understand and recognize that. So now if you go and Google word mindfulness, you'll find a lot of things has been done, a lot of studies have been done. Right? And the people who made it popular are actually Buddhists, right? Even in the West, although they don't overtly, claim mindfulness for Buddhism, for a very, very good reason. They don't want the people to be turned off by the fact that it's a religious thing. So they kept it very secular. But we know they are Buddhists. A lot of them are like disciples of Dalai Lama and all this, right? That have made it such a big thing in the West. Okay, so it's in a way a very skillful thing where you understand that it's not about claiming credit, it's about doing good, right? So that it should be something that we should rejoice lah. It's a good thing. Okay, so that mental training. Now, working towards death. Now, as a Buddhist, what's important when you're near death? We all know that death has to come, right? You cannot escape in some form and don't know when also. It doesn't mean that you have to be old to die. We all know that. I have a friend's auntie who just passed away, right? I think today's a funeral. She's only 60 plus. It happened in a short span of 2 weeks. Healthy, go out, go for tea and all that kind of stuff. 1 day, 2 days, breathless, see doctor, not better, admitted to hospital, crash, intubated, ICU, died. Okay, so fast. Otherwise, quite good health. Okay, so you must remember this can happen to any one of us. It's not always somebody else, right? So we have to be prepared from the word go. Of course, we don't. It'd be nice if we could talk to kids like that, but of course, I think if we ourselves are not comfortable, we'll never be able to talk to kids like that, right? But I think it's not a bad idea that introduce the idea of mortality to kids. Although before the age of 5 or so, the idea of death is not very well understood by kids. That's why you see a lot of kids sometimes want to be Superman and all, they want to fly off the window, because they don't know what it means to die, right? I see cartoon, I jump off, I just boing, I come back again, So there's no concept, So maybe as they get a bit older, you test water, then we talk about death, this. But don't put it in a negative way, but just put it as a natural part of life that they have to know that these things do happen, right? Okay, but for us who know, a lot of times we say taboo, don't want to talk, sway, just hide it aside, right? So I think it's time to open up the thing and we have to discuss this and we have to be frank about it, all right? Knowing that our death will come at some point in life and we don't know how it's going to come, but if it comes in a sudden way, of course, hopefully we have prepared our family members and we have settled our affairs so that it happens, we don't leave a mess behind us, okay? Now, the other thing, of course, is leading to death. There are many ways, okay? As we all know, as you grow older, or even not older, but as you develop disease, the death can be one that's lingering and uncertain. All right? We already know it's uncertain, but it can be lingering in the sense that it drags on and it causes a lot of stress to everybody, yourself and your family. All right? And the illness can be fatal, sometimes not fatal, but it just drags and drags and drags and drags for years. Right? So anyway, what do we do about it? I mean, obviously not much, right? You can't really do medically, you can do whatever you can, but how do you prepare for these things? I think one of the most important things is that we prepare ourselves and our families as far as possible by talking out these things. Like if these things were to happen, right? What do I want? Can I myself accept death? So if I reach a point that I'm found collapse, brought to hospital, they tell me that I may never wake up. Do I want them to try endlessly, right, until my heart says give up? Or do I want to say, okay, it's fine, right? If it looks like I'm not going to wake up after 2 days, 3 days, you can take a decision to stop everything, right? In other words, end of life planning has to be there. What do you want? If you have a chronic disease, say for example, or say like a heart disease, then you progressively develop heart failure, or you've been smoking all your life, and then you've got lung disease, Then as you get older, you get huffing and puffing. Every time you go to hospital for infections, in, out, Then at some point, you know that this is going to hit you and you're going to be dead, right? So you also want to know also when you want to stop doing this. If you're going into hospital every 3 days and go out 2 days and go back 3 days, then you have to also be able to talk to your family so that you make your family's life easy. Right? At some point, you decide for yourself, maybe I should stop somewhere. Enough lah, it's okay. You just give me some morphine, make me comfortable. If I get another infection, let me go. That's fine. From a Buddhist standpoint, I think there's nothing wrong with that. Right? Because we should be able to accept death. We should be able to talk about death. And we should also be able to get our families prepared for our death. And indirectly, they learn to prepare for their own death. Yeah? So planning for your own sort of end of life, it's very important. And it's not just you, it's the whole, inner social circle that you have to deal with. And the earlier you deal with it, the better. And the more explicit you are about what you want, the better. Because as a Buddhist, as I said, dying is not a big deal. It happens. So only things that you want to prepare, right? So the preparation is like what I talk about health. Preventive medicine, right? You do it when you're young, not when you're old. Similarly, Buddhist practice, you do it when you're well, not only when you're sick. Because when you're sick, it becomes increasingly difficult. For example, meditation. If you've never done in your life, suddenly I ask you to do meditation, it's going to be tough. So if you're well now, please get into a habit of doing something. Right? Sit down a few minutes here and there, get your mind focused, so that at the end of your life, you can maintain a peaceful mind. Without, like, it's about to go, you don't be too attached to people, that and all that. Because you know, right, at the last thought moment, if you are having an unwholesome state of mind, it basically sabotages your rebirth. Okay, all right? So you don't want that, right? So you practice ahead, lah. It's preventive, lah. All right? Practice ahead, sort out. When you sort out, your family is at peace, you are less likely to get agitated when you're dying. Because if you haven't sorted it out, your family is unprepared, everybody is wailing and calling you and all that, you're already almost gone already, you know. Right? Your mind will start to have attachment and all sorts of unpleasant things will come, right? So as a Buddhist, I think it's really, really, you screwed yourself badly here, all right? So do some preventive measures, plan it nicely, everybody prepared, everybody calm, let go. That's the best way to go, all right? We know as Buddhists, no point holding on. If it's time to go, it's time to go. It doesn't matter, all right? You're not being fatalistic. I'm not saying that you just refuse when there's treatment. You can be treated, but you just accept the fact that doesn't have to turn out well all the time, right? I think I told the story before of one of my friends, right? My doctor friends who passed away at 35. He was a Buddhist, and he was a perfect example of how to die well, right? How to die well. Fit as a fiddle, one marathon, I just summarize quickly, right? Sudden diagnosis of I would say a really, really unexpected diagnosis of cancer. He lived 6 weeks after diagnosis, okay? Only 6 weeks, huh? Before that, he was running marathons, okay? And during that 6 weeks after the diagnosis, did he attempt treatment? He attempted. He wasn't doing too much. He decided enough. We stop here, and we just escalate my practice, settle the family affairs, and then when he passed away very, very peacefully. And his family was also at peace. All right? There was no wailing and all that kind of thing, And the mom, after passing away, mom told me, I've never seen anybody pass away so peacefully. Okay? Especially from a cancer. All right? Of course, medical care can help. We can also give you medication to ease the pain and all that. As a Buddhist, please don't be afraid of taking medicine to ease the pain, right? Because if you, of course, have a good practice, you can also help to modify your perception of pain, so your pain medication is less. Mentally, you can still remain very clear to the very end, all right? That's important for us, right, as Buddhists. Okay, so there's a fine line there, but of course, if you have a Buddhist doctor, good, we understand the requirements, we work towards it. So this friend of mine, I asked him when you diagnosed with this, I said, what do you feel? He said, well, initially I felt sad, because why me, right? But after that, he says, part of life. Some go early, some go late, right? But for me, it just happened to be early, lah. So I said, what do you want? Done if that since you're going to have a short life now, right? We don't know, at that time, haven't really started treatment. He said, well, we'll just give it a go. If it works, it works. If it doesn't work, and I think it's causing too much side effects, right? I think no point, lah. We just let go, right? I have to sort out my parents. My parents find it hard to accept, so I do what I can. Yeah, we talk to them and we try to get them on the same page. And in the meantime, I want to increase time for my practice. So even throughout the entire 6 weeks of his life, he meditated every day, right, for nearly an hour, despite the pain, despite whatever, right? And his day was actually, you ask him, how's your day? He will say, oh, today I can meditate. Or today a bit hard, meditation not so good. That's how he rates his days, okay? Very interesting, right? So it's a very exemplary Buddhist, And his wife is nominal Buddhist, right? Also understands all these things. So there, again, no unnecessary attachment and all that kind of clinginess and all that. So she's practical. Yeah, you need to do, you do, right? When the kid is very young, making noise, you say, okay, at night you take the kid home to the mother-in-law so that they won't disturb him so he can sleep. So things like that, right? But a lot of people say, no lah, must stay together lah, not much time already lah, that kind of thing, right? Right? Then all that clingy things, sometimes you think it's good, but actually it's worse, right? So all the way to the end of his life, even the last week before his life, he's already come to terms so well. We actually sorted out a few things by letting him meet some Buddhist teachers and clarify teachings and sort out some of the things that he wanted to sort out mentally, all right? Which is important at the end of life. Anything that you need to sort out, any unease, any Things that you have done in your life that you're not so happy, you want to talk to somebody about it, let it out. You don't want it to come and haunt you at the last thought moment. So get it out of your system. Early get it out. Okay, so he got it all out, right? We spoke to him, and even the last week of his life, when he was still able to walk, right? He himself went around, signed his own check, paid for the for the niche and everything for himself. All right? He did it all himself. Okay? Nobody had to do it for him. In fact, we went shopping for where to put the ashes. And I asked him, yeah, he went with him, we went one place, where. Then, and his considerations were very simple. Whatever is convenient for the family. Right? Yeah, he says, actually, whatever you do actually doesn't really matter to me. It's more for them, right? For them to come to terms, help them cope with the thing, Even I say funeral, I talk to him, so funeral how, What you want, Oh, anything, whatever my parents want, it's more for them, So you see, that kind of thinking is interesting, right? But so when it came to the end, really there was nothing. There was no unhappiness, there was no, a lot of regret, that kind of thing, nothing. Everything was very cool and calm. And towards the end of life, when we knew it was going, which he told us already, he wanted us there, right, to recite the Buddhist text for him. He said, call Bante in, and I think we recite with you and all that. So we just did that for him. And he was very calm when he went. Okay, so this is how you prepare for death, right? And this is a very perfect example, a living example. I can't tell you this even if I didn't experience this myself, all right? Because I saw it in my own eyes, and this actually told me that the Buddhist teachings can achieve this end, right? And this end is amazing, so amazing that almost unreal, right? But it's possible, right? So if you put effort into it, you plan ahead, this is it. Isn't it beautiful? Good way, right, to go. Yeah, so anyway, so that's the thing. Now, in other situations where you are in a hospital, unexpected, you end up with a lot of procedures, ICU, which is where I work. Now, biggest problems that I always see is that people can't make decisions, right? Patients may not have made a decision, so that leaves a big problem. Family members uncomfortable because they say, I don't know what he wants or what she wants, So dare not make. What if I make a wrong decision? My family members will blame me. Or I feel bad because I'm a son or daughter. Am I not being a good son or daughter by finishing off my parent, right? All right, so you can see, right, in this situation, if they had an opportunity to talk earlier and the parent had already discussed all these things and the family discussed openly so that there's no conflict, everybody will be on the same page. So when push comes to shove, when you make a decision, everybody will make the decision in the best interest, right? Is there a perfect answer for every individual? There isn't one. So ultimately, it's what you want. So you just make you draw your line for yourself, Plan early, draw the line for yourself, and make it known to everybody around you, including your family, and make sure that all of them know, right? Now, this is simple family. More complex family, a lot of property, a lot of this and that. Please sort all those things out, Try to do all those things and sort it out some way and somehow first before you reach that point, okay? So that everything's in place. Like for this friend of mine who died at a young age, part of the 6 weeks before his death, he spent time settling all his insurance claims and everything, okay? So that the wife doesn't have to do anything. So when he passed away, everything all done already, just submit. Okay, so you can do something equivalent if you have a lot of complicated, treasures in your family, right? Just settle it, plan it, and the thing, right? Of course, if everybody is very rich and you don't need your money, then just donate away, Okay, you just write a will and donate it all away, all right? So by doing all this, you will actually decrease a lot of complexities around death, a lot of problems among your family members and yourself, yeah. So very important. Okay, so now we come to the end of this talk. Basically, I already talked about living most part of life and now there's the dying part. Right? The dying part is actually getting more and more important as we have more and more old people. So all of us are going to face more and more of this, more frequently, right? With our parents, our relatives and all that. So I think we really, really have to look at it squarely in the eye. And as a Buddhist, we should not be uncomfortable with the idea of talking about death. We should talk it as a matter of fact and just deal with it, right? And ironically, in the West, a lot of times it's actually better done. they can talk about death. All right? I've had patients that come in, and in the hospital, it was a policy of the hospital. When they come in very sick, as long as they're conscious, we actually talk to them and ask them, do you want to be intubated? Do you want us to do this and that? Or if this happens, should we just draw the line? Then the patients will sometimes they'll just not, then they'll try to sign. Right? Here you talk to them, like that you get scolding from the relative. Yeah, I'm not kidding you, you know. Yeah? So then we talked to that was 1998, you know. They were like that. Yeah, so it's a different cultural sort of thing. But I think we should change it because this doesn't help anybody. This so-called Asian style is not helpful. So let's do something that is really good for everybody, and then we move along. We have to evolve also, yeah, when the things change. Then maybe 100 years ago, this is never a problem, right? People die so suddenly, they die so quickly. 50 years old already die, right? 65, 70 years old, you light red candles and celebrate already, right? Now at 60 years old, we say so young. 90 years old, you say, wow, okay. 80-year-old, wow, just a bit old, huh? Just a bit old. No, seriously, because things have changed so much, right? And the technologies have allowed us to do a lot of ridiculous things that you can keep a corpse alive for months, right? So you have to keep in mind, all these ridiculous things, right? And do you want to keep a corpse alive for months and then after leave the family in debt for years? Crazy, right? The family that you love and then you want them to go and spend all that money knowing it's futile because they feel guilty? Prevent it, so that the living can live properly, and if you're supposed to go, you just go, right? So it doesn't matter anyway. Okay, so basically that's all I have to say for you today. Thank you so much.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, Dr. Tan. So now it's a Q&A session. So, brothers and sisters, anyone of you have burning questions you want to ask? Yeah.
I just wonder, doctor, if you have this clause in the hospital, suppose a patient is coming in a serious condition, and then the patient wants to tell you something, so can you take down a statement from him, something like that?
If he's actually mentally clear, yes, we can take it down, but it's not a legally binding thing. Yeah, but because if you want to do a legal thing, I mean, we writing down in the notes actually is almost there, but usually you may, if it's something that is like, if you're talking about like property or whatever, right, you still need some legal thing to be done, but we can write it down.
Okay, I'm asking
but it won't carry so much weight, because
okay, let me go further. I'm asking you about this, something like a patient is on a life support machine later on, so he has got many children.
Yes.
After many days, it will be difficult for them to decide whether to pull off the plug or not.
Yes.
So maybe the patient can tell the doctor to do something before that. He can tell the doctor, if I don't wake up after 7 days, please tell my children that life machine must be unplugged. Can something like that be done?
That can be done.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you.
For that kind of thing, it can be done. For other things like property or that cannot be done. Okay, yeah, that can be done. So normally what we do, we will actually document the notes when you come in, that patient we communicated this and that, and we also can sign it. Usually most hospitals will have what we call a DNR order, do not resuscitate order, right? Or the do not resuscitate order does not entail a withdrawal of therapy.
So the children can see that.
Oh yeah, they can see.
Parents will.
Yes, they can see. That means, in other words, you can write. We can write it down, and if you really want to document it that way, we can actually get you to sign it, right? And then usually we have a witness, and that's usually applicable, and we tell them that this is the parents' choice. But in the practical world, they can contest it still, all right? But usually, if we have a very clear evidence that the patient decided on this, right, we can still go against the children and follow the patient's wishes, all right? Yeah, but the system here is not so evolved that the thing is so clearly written, right? So when you're in hospital, sometimes they say, oh, but maybe my parent not very competent mentally because they're sick already, that kind of thing. So sometimes it is good to actually do it when you're well, Like, okay, we say there's an AMD, the Advanced Medical Directives and all that, but there are problems with it. I think later on there's another talk, advanced care planning, so maybe that they will address some of these issues for you, yeah? But on a practical level at the hospital, if you, for example, at admission, you tell me you're already sick, say you have a heart attack, just say then you're quite sick already, say, oh, okay, now if I'm deteriorate and this and this and this, When if I lose consciousness and I can't tell you, and if you need to put a tube down, I don't want it. You can say that, and we will document that. Of course, the best is still to talk in front of your family members, then everybody knows. You know what I mean? And witness it, right? That is why I said the best is still to deal before that, right? Everybody know. But from a practical point of view, I know it's tough, lah. Especially big families, it's very, very tough. Everybody got different reasons to make a decision this way or that way. Yeah. But yes, we can document and we can insist. And usually the law will support. Yeah.
Anyone else? Any more question?
I've done my AMD before.
Yes.
I've done my AMD before, but I'm not quite sure how detailed it is. And since you mentioned just now about not wanting intubation,
Yes.
is that already in the AMD?
Okay, the AMD, I think that the criteria is very specific. All right, if you have something that we all deem to be totally irreversible and all that, and if we know that you got AMD, we can pull it up, provided we know. Okay, because your AMD is not like easily accessible everywhere. Is that the moment you enter the hospital, it flex up that you got AMD. That's the problem, and I think that's the problem that has to be addressed. Okay, that is why I still say that it's still very important that your family members know. So that, for example, say a family member or friend knows, so the moment you get into hospital, right, and something happens, you are unable to tell anybody what you want, somebody can actually alert us, and then if the family interferes or whatever, we pull out the information, and we say, look, all right, and you have the right to decide. You see, so the problem now is that the AMD thing is not online all the time. That's the problem. You see, I'm not sure whether NG will address that. Whether it's getting better now or not, I don't know. Yeah. Pass the mic.
Yes, I think later NG will address this under the advanced care planning.
Yeah.
That means it's a workshop where there will be some questions that you need to answer, like what you consider your quality of life and what you want to do if
things happen.
These things happen. In fact, the scenario where you are still conscious and able to talk is quite unlikely, because if you really have a severe heart attack or stroke, sometimes you are just unconscious by the time you reach the hospital. So this will, those people who want to do the ACP, and they have one-to-one where you go through all the questions with them, with your loved ones as well, and then they submit it to, I think, to the records. They enter into the public medical records. So when the doctors assess it, it will pop out. So I'm not sure. NG will explain this clearer, because I'm not so sure about
But
that.
I think the problem is a practical problem, yeah? Because I don't think the system is like online all the time. And also, whether you're public hospital, private hospital, the records are not exactly integrated yet. So we do have a little gap somewhere where some things may have to be done first, because we don't know, right? So, of course, from a medical standpoint is that always, when in doubt, you say first lah. You resuscitate first. But then if we find out that you have said something like that, then we can always withdraw, right? But of course, in the ideal world, we don't even do it. You know what I mean? Once we are certain, we don't only do it. All right. So till then, I think this is something still evolving. Yeah. I don't think we have a perfect system. So we just have to work towards it. So the best is still work with the family and the friends to settle this thing, so everybody knows. Right? Of course, as doctors, we always jokingly say, like, we just tattoo over our head, like, yeah. Or on our chest, you see, do CPR, right? Tattoo. Yeah. Okay? You just tattoo over, so you open up. Okay, don't do. Right? Okay, so these are the things that we say, because it's a practical problem. Yeah, it's a practical problem. But definitely at any point where you are still conscious and competent mentally, your wishes should come first, over and above whatever the family members say. So a lot of times family members will try to sometimes wriggle it by saying that you're not mentally competent, this and that. So sometimes we do face difficulties lah. Yeah, so it's not that we can't overcome it, but it takes time. So while we are taking time to do it, we still may have to resuscitate and everything. So I know. I also, we all feel a bit uncomfortable with the idea, right? Because the whole idea we do this, we don't want to get to that point. Yeah, but unfortunately, till we get a system that is a lot more readily available to flag it up, Yeah, yeah. Because like last time we used to have a donor card, right? Organ donor card, right? But if only we could have do not resuscitate card, which we have not done, right? Yeah, or something that is online that becomes part of our system. The moment you come in, we scan your IC, pop, the thing comes out. This person has got AMD, blah 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 blah, or has got ACP. These are things you want. These are things you don't want. That would be ideal. Let's see what Angie has to say, because I'm not sure whether she's working. I think she's probably working with the people involved in all this work. So perhaps maybe you can bring it up, and hopefully this will come to pass. Yes, please.
Thanks very much. I understand about the AMD and whether the system has changed better. I was contemplating the AMD, and then I was speaking to another Buddhist doctor who deals with a lot of hospices, etc.
Yeah.
And then he was saying that, okay, so I understood it in a very lay fashion, like basically brain dead lah. If you're brain dead, then they take off the life support. You make that decision first, and you don't have to ask your family to make that decision. But then he was saying that actually, on a personal basis, he's seen a lot of deaths in all sorts of different permutations, and it's quite hard to actually, know the actual situation at that point in time. So I wasn't sure, I didn't go into much details, I didn't further discuss, but is the AMD, does it cover more like standard? I don't know, is there like a standard definition of brain dead? That means, and then the other thing is that if there is some, for example, if you're very old, then maybe it's time to go, but if you're very young, does it also allow you to try, because sometimes there are those kind of pilot therapies, right? So it's still possible to save the person. Does it prevent you from trying those? I just wanted to understand that. Thank you.
Okay, first of all, the AMD covers not just brain death, right? Basically, if, in a situation where you may not be brain dead yet, but we think the outcome's going to be you're going to end up dying anyway, or the outcome's going to be so poor, right? So the AMD actually is broader than brain death. Brain death actually is a bit more clear-cut. Brain death criteria, depending on the country, in Singapore is brain stem death. That's the criteria we use, right? It is a fairly rigorous criteria, and if you want to diagnose somebody that's brain dead, we need 2 people to do the test and agree, okay? But because we use the brain stem death criteria, brain stem, as you know, controls what we call autonomic function. That means your blood pressure control, your heartbeat, your breathing, things like that. Things that are essential to life. So as from our point of view is that if the things essential to life are gone because they are destroyed, in other words, you will never be ever alive again in a real way, as a person, okay? Right? You can be supported by machines and all that, but where do you draw the line, right? But because the brain will never recover, so you'll never wake up in a normal way. So we consider that brain death, right? So that's Singapore. Some countries consider what we call total brain death. That means the whole brain must be mashed up, right? So they will scan, they will do angiogram, whatever have you. In Singapore, we have done it various ways, but of course, our standard criteria is still brainstem death, so there are criteria that we can do clinically to measure, but if family starts to disagree and all that, sometimes we go on to more tests, right? And by the time we get there, a lot of times the rest of the brain is also dead anyway. Yeah, so we tend to err on the side of being a bit more cautious, yeah, because we also don't want to over-diagnose this sort of thing, but and allow any mistakes, right? Because the price to pay is very high. A lot of times the brain death criteria and all that has come into play. Previously, I think it's not because of terminating life support. It is the reason is more because of organ donation, right? Because you want to diagnose brain death early, if you know it, while the body is still working well, so the organs can be harvested and donated, okay? Because if there is no hurry to do it, then it really doesn't matter, right? You can wait, right? But because you want to donate organs, you need to get it fresh as possible, all right? Because the longer you keep, infections will set in, the organs will start to deteriorate, for various reasons, and then not usable anymore lah, so wasted lah, right? Of course, as depends on your religious background. Because in Buddhist, we all say it doesn't matter lah. Donation of your organs when you're already knowing you're almost there already, it's actually a very meritorious deed, right? And we should highly encourage organ donation in our community, right? And if you get a situation where your some organs, nowadays a lot of things can be used, so you can donate almost anything under the sun, right? Yeah, whole body can be taken for various things, okay? From your tendons, from your cornea, from your heart, lung, a lot of things can be donated. So I think since the Buddhist community, so I think we all should really just do it lah. When it comes to it, we just be happy to do it. Give everything, doesn't matter. We don't need the body anyway, right? Yeah, you cremate also, you don't even know what is what anyway after that. We keep in a bottle, keep for what? Also, we also don't know, right? It's more tradition than anything, right? Yeah. Okay, so that's basically where the idea of brain death came about, lah, right? But as I said, different countries got different things. Like in Japan, they don't recognize brain death for some strange reason. I don't know why also. It's culture or whatever, so they don't recognize. Right, so okay, that's brain death. But the AMD itself covers a lot more widely, not just brain death. Because brain death is usually from patients who have bad strokes or head injury, right? But the AMD covers people with other terminal illnesses also. Cancer, chronic heart failure, chronic respiratory failure. All that will be covered actually in the AMD, but in a very generic way. So it can be applied, all right? So in a hospital setting, AMD, as you said before, right? But in the hospital, when things happen, sometimes when you go in, if you're still alert, you can tell the doctors, you can sign a form of DNR. That means no resuscitation. You can do that, right? Like, for example, you got terminal cancer already, like, you got 3 months, but now tube here, tube there, got pain, got this, got that. You go in, you can still be alert and you can still talk. You can tell the doctor, can I sign a DNR? If I collapse, please do not do anything. Can be done. In fact, that one will be the most effective. Right? Because it's everybody is there at that point in time. We see you doing it. You tell us exactly what you want or you don't want. It's fine. Okay. It's also possible to say that, okay, you have an AMD, but when you come in, even though you satisfy some of the criteria of the AMD, but we think that this is an acutely reversible thing, let's say a pneumonia, a simple infection that we can treat, we will probably treat you anyway, right? Because it's easy enough for retreat. You may come back to normal, totally normal, right? So the AMD is basically to prevent situations where you remain vegetative forever and ever, in a kind of terrible situation. Yeah. Now, what about using other new therapies and all that? I think in our context here, the only people who get a lot of leeway, only doctors who get a lot of leeway to use alternative or a lot of experimental therapies are actually the oncologists. Yeah. In other disciplines, we almost never do it. Very rare. First of all, there are hardly any, okay, yeah, or they're not available to us, yeah, and I think most people are also not so open to the idea, right? A lot of people say, oh, wow, I guinea pig, that kind of thing. But strangely, for oncology, people accept, people will try, right? And I've known friends who have parents who have tried that have done well, they've done very well. Especially oncology these days, I think we should look at it slightly differently. Last time I used to think, advanced cancer sure die one, don't try so hard, that's what I always used to say. But I think my thinking has changed. Because in the last few years, even in a lot of advanced cancers have lived so long because of immunotherapy, and the quality of life is so excellent, that I think we should not deprive them of a lot of treatment. A lot of things that are acute, single sort of insult that we think we can reverse without too much sequelae, we should do it lah. We should just do it, yeah? And now the cancer therapy has come to a point where is that if I can keep you alive and well for a long period, you never know. In the next 1-2 years, you might actually have a cure, all right? But I'm not talking about patients who are already bed-bound, already bloated, a lot of pain, things all over the shop, and it's obviously not working. That's different. Because no matter what you try, it's not going to last 2 years' time for the research to give you new stuff, right? So we have to be a little bit realistic here, Yeah. So every case is different. We have to you have to think about it and then weigh the pros and cons. And I think the patient themselves have to also ask questions, and talk about the pros and cons and decide for himself or herself. Because you may be prolonging for that therapy 2 years' time, which may never appear. We don't know, right? But if your quality of life is good, it makes sense, lah, right? Your quality of life is already like really bad. Do you really want to do that, even if there's 2 years or a hope that may never materialize, you know, right? So again, we should sort all this out early when we are well, to decide what we want, and then at the time it occurs, we should re-examine it, because all these decisions should not be made just like, once you put, you cannot take back. It's not true, lah. You can still be flexible. Things move, right? Medicine progresses, you know, so we have to adjust. We adjust and just discuss with your doctors. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Just ask, okay? Because when you ask a question, it's easier for us to explain to you. Because at least we know what you want to know and what you don't understand. The biggest problem is that you say, oh, doctors should be able to explaining, but we don't know what you want to know. There's so much to explain. If I explain the entire book, you also don't understand me, right? And that may not, and 90% of which you don't want to know anyway, right? So ask questions, even if it sounds like a very innocent, stupid questions. But as you all know, right, the most innocent, stupid questions are the most difficult questions. Just ask. Oh, okay. I think that one part of it I'll let NG handle for it, okay? But basically DNR means we do not do CPR on you, we don't shove a tube, you know, but the DNR also has a whole spectrum. DNR means do not resuscitate. Okay, AMD is, okay, in a way it's the same, but AMD is that it's because of, like, for example, some chronic thing that makes you not so well already, or something that will end up with an outcome that is not going to be good, right? You plan ahead and you put there, do not, it's essentially still like a do not resuscitate, you know? No, strictly speaking, no. You do not need to. If it satisfies your criteria, but if the situation is a little bit different from what is in the AMD thing, then you may have to still do a DNR if you want to. Right? Because the AMD is not like covers everything under the sun. It doesn't. There may be certain situations where it's not exactly clear-cut. All right? Like, for example, if you get a pneumonia, okay, you get chest infection, right? Yeah? I mean, we don't know which way it's going to turn, right? Okay, you don't know which way it's going to turn. But then over the first few days, you get better. Of course, I will treat you aggressively, lah. Even you have AMD, I might treat you aggressively, you know, because I think you're going to get better. You might be able to pop up, but unfortunately, it turned around and then after it went down again, right? Then if we know that you have an AMD, we can say, okay, maybe perhaps we can let go, lah. But sometimes, even with the AMD, theoretically, this is a reversible disease, right? But you may say that, oh, yeah, try away so many days, not doing anything. I myself don't want anymore. Okay, so if you're alert, you say, no, I don't want, I DNR. So if I collapse or whatever, please don't try, even though there might be a chance. Enough already. Okay, so you can make a DNR on top of your AMD if you want to. Because the AMD doesn't cover everything under the sun. ACP is a bit different. ACP in the sense that you plan exactly all the things that you want or don't want along the way. A bit more detailed. The AMD is a bit too generic, a bit too broad. But I think later when NG talks to you, you can clarify with her some more. Because she will have, I think, more details for you. All right? Yeah, but DNR applies to a lot of other situations where you just means that do not resuscitate. That means don't jump on my chest and do CPR, that kind of thing.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I'm wondering whether the doctor will exercise some discretion in doing resuscitation, because sometimes I understand it's quite a tough process for elderly, and let's say they already got a severe stroke, got heart attack, sent to A&E, and the person has not signed any DNR. That's the first question. The second question is, say the person is hospitalized and the family member say no resuscitation, DNR. Then the next time the person is hospitalized again, does the family member have to tell the hospital again?
Yes, okay. Because once you leave the hospital, the situation, that means the patients have already survived it already, right? So it's a new situation, so you reassess, that's one, right? Mm-hmm. So the question about the patient who is like stroke, very bad condition, and go to the hospital, end up A&E, like you know it's going to die already, like actually whatever you do is live maybe 1 week, live 2 weeks, but still die, huh? But you see, the problem is that even though theoretically we can, I think 20 years ago, we exerted some discretion and said, let's stop here, we'll be fine, no? But today, I think the problem is the legal environment. That's the problem. Unless the patient herself or himself could say, I already have an AMD, then then it's okay. Or the patient even in that state can indicate that, okay? See, because now the problem is that in the legal environment now, if you don't do it, then the family say, I never said that you could do this. What? The patient also didn't say what. What makes you think that you have the right to do it? I want to live one day more. What? It's your choice, man. You know what I mean? You know what I mean or not? Right? I think we have to be careful. That's why sometimes all these legal things has actually made medical practice very bad. Because now we no longer use our common sense to do things, We do things what we call cover backside. So, Because you can see from the last few weeks, right, of the newspapers, you know what's been happening. It's actually getting very absurd, right? When doctors' good intention is being read in a very, very warped way, and we are make it look like as if everything also we got vested interest. It's a bit absurd, lah. But if we head in that direction, that's why I said a lot of public don't realize. They think, but it's our right. Yes, it is your right. But let me tell you something. Even if I explain to you, or a doctor friend of mine explained to me, say, for example, I got cancer, I want to get treatment, right? Explain to me everything under the sun, to me, of all the choices available. Do you think that I will understand everything to the same depth, right? And all the intricacies of the pros and cons as he as an oncologist? Obviously not. What more a lay person, right? That's also the reason why I said, as a lay person, please ask the questions that bother you. We cannot read your mind. What we think is important, you may not think is important, right? But when it happens, because you thought something else is important, you say, why the doctor never tell me? You know what I'm saying? Because what bothers you, I don't know. But to us, certain things are important, certain things are not. I mean, a case in point, like for example, the doctor will give the injection. He didn't, of course, he didn't explain there were some issues, but also, to be fair, it's a common thing that's done. A lot of the things, the side effects, we ourselves as doctors don't think it's really important. You know what I mean? So if we had gone for it, we wouldn't have done, do lah. Some of the things we also not know, because we hardly ever see anyway, we don't even remember that such a thing exists, but the problem exists, right? But you see, when it happens, then somebody can say, oh, but I didn't agree to this. If you told me this, I won't take it, So a lot of decisions, that's the problem with medical practice today. It's no longer the doctor helping you decide in a difficult situation, right? So please make life easy for a doctor lah. You decide something so you can lah.
I think
And you want questions, you ask lah. So so then don't make it difficult for us to start to, next time our medical course have to have mind reading courses,
I think part of it, the education can help, because like if you watch a YouTube video on resuscitation, it's pretty tough. It can, like you can break the ribs of the person.
I think the breaking, yes, I agree. Yeah. Actually, breaking ribs and all that is one thing, but I think, of course, if it's a fruitful outcome, it's fine, correct? Yeah. But in the case you painted the scenario, it's not really fruitful, we know it's not going to work anything, okay? Now, internet is one problem also, it's another problem, okay? Because you see, it's very hard for the public to tell whether this is legit or not. There are a lot of nonsense out there, okay? A lot of nonsense. And even doctors get snooked by the nonsense out there sometimes when we refer to it, okay? To make things even more complicated, which is actually very distressing for us, actually. There are even a lot of studies that our own medical people are basing our treatment on, or studies that people have been taken to court and sued, and these studies are backed to, are used to back the fact that this guy didn't do this, because the study shows this. Sadly, there's a lot of studies are very poorly done. In fact, the last 10, 20 years, we've had a lot of fraud. We have a lot of issues with industry-driven, sort of things for outcomes. So a lot of things that may not actually be better outcome from this treatment, but appears to be, only to be discredited another 5 to 10 years later. In 2002, I think, or 4, or somewhere around there, in the ICU sort of community, there were like about 7 major papers presented at a big ICU meeting in the US, and the papers were all published in a very well-known journal, which until today is considered one of the top medical journals, right? Now it's like nearly about 10 years plus down the line, right? No survivors, from that 7 papers, all dead, all out. That time is, if you don't do it, it's almost negligent. So hospitals went crazy, everywhere went crazy, started putting protocols that were totally absurd from my point of view. Some of them were really illogical, right? But that's because the study showed so everybody had to do. You don't do, you are negligent, right? Of course, Singapore, we were a bit slow because our public hospital, not so much resource. So some of the very expensive thing, okay lah, never mind lah, don't do. Hospital will say cannot, too expensive, so it's okay. But the fact is that all that nearly 7 or 8 papers, nothing, no survivors, It's only 10 years down the line, all the thing out the window. But of course, at that time, when I looked at the papers, already about 5 or 6 of them, I already said this is illogical. It doesn't make sense. But unfortunately, they were published in major journals. How are you going to fight? Right? So at that point in time, if the patient took you to court based on those journals, you would die. Right? But it's already passed already. You pay your fine, you go to your jail, whatever, you're way over already. 10 years later, all proven wrong. That means you did the right thing. Too bad. Right? So, but these are the things that medical people, non-medical, the public doesn't realize, you see? Right? Because science is evolving. And they also don't understand that in the past 20 years, or maybe long before that, people who do research, a lot of them have a very good intention. They are curious. They want to find out new things. Last 20 years, a lot of research is because I want to make a name for myself. Right? So you either publish or perish. So you publish all sorts of rubbish. As long as it gets by the reviewer, you're lucky. But doesn't mean it's good. That's why we have all these problems. So now it becomes so difficult that they try to do all these reviews and all that, and reviews also got problem. Then also again thrown out window. All big reviews, and then a few years again thrown out again. So I think it's tough lah. It's tough because medical is not an exact science, right? It's not like physics, and all that where it's quite exacting. Medical, there are a lot of things because each individual is genetically different. Each person's response to illness is different, that kind of thing. Each hospital is different. Like people say, okay, we do a multi-center trial, right? So we got 10,000 patients in 10 hospitals, just say, okay? Sounds very good, right? For the law of sampling and averaging and all that, it's very good, right? But you all know, right? The 10 hospital standards are not the same, right? So combining the data, would it actually mean anything? May not, right? Because some hospitals are so lousy, all patients go there die anyway. Right? Correct? Others are so good, and all them go in there, maybe 9 out of 10 survive. So when you average out, it seems that the thing is 50% good. Right? Correct? No? Right? But all these things cannot be factored. But this is also a difficulty in the trial process and all that. Right? So nobody knows the perfect answer. But all these complexities, again, as a lay public, right, is unknown to you, right? But these are the things that we have to deal with sometimes. Yeah. And a drug that's been out for so many years, like for example, what's the thing called last time, the painkiller? Anyway, Vioxx, right? It's been around for so long, right? Then after that, they found that, increases the heart attack. Then all those people who had heart attacks suddenly started suing the company after don't know how many years, right? So you can see how medical care is like, right? So you can't predict. How do you know? You have to use the drug for some time long enough. All the early studies are all safe, but the studies only go up to a certain number of years. But when you go beyond that, there's the post-market surveillance. And if that one, sometimes we unearth things that you never knew before, right? Yeah, maybe cause cancer or whatever, right? You won't know what. Then are you to say that you're not going to issue the drug? Like who's going to test it for 10 years? You're also not going to get people, right? So that's the problem. So, yes. Correct. So that's why I say the family has to sort out among themselves first. And as Buddhists, I think because death should not be a taboo subject, so we should talk about it and sort it out and decide where and when to draw that line, and how to draw that line, right? You see? So we also have to keep in mind that we don't be overly pessimistic to the point that everything also give up and don't do. So like I say, like contentment, right? You can do, but don't expect. So this one also is similar, right? If you think that it's got a good chance of benefit, you do, but you don't expect the outcome to be good, and if it's no good, or you think it's not going to turn out well, you know when to pull back. So it's all about balance. It's about balance and having a moderation in how you deal with things. Yeah.
So thank you, Dr. Dan. I think we're time's up now. For more questions, actually, there will be a workshop in the afternoon by Angie. We're talking about Outrun's care planning. Yeah. So, yeah. So let's say 3 sadhu to Dr. Tan again for his sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.